Cove Productions presents the Solo in South Philly podcast with your host and local legal whiz, with knowledge, Mark Kachi.
What is good, everyone? Welcome to the Solo in South Philly podcast. Our season 1 is called Law School Reunion. And what we're going to do is go back, way back into time. Each episode, I'll be reuniting with a different law school colleague. We will discuss what led them to law school, their law school experience, and what they do now. My first guest is Cheyne Scott. Cheyne R. Scott is a civil litigation attorney and partner with Cheyne, Lamparello, Mallon, and Capuzzo, PC. My apologies if I mispronounce any of those names. She represents various clients with a concentration in civil litigation, focusing on labor and employment law. She is active in the New Jersey State Bar Association, is a member of the Diversity Committee, and is a member of the Executive Committee of the State Bar Labor and Employment Section. Cheyne is also an active member of the Garden State Bar Association, serving on its board of directors, and is also a co-chair of the GSBA Labor and Employment Steering Committee. Cheyne is GSBA's 2021 Professional Lawyer of the Year recipient and the 2022 GSBA Raymond A. Brown Award recipient. Cheyne conducts anti-harassment and discrimination trainings for public entities and presents seminars and writes about the impact of unconscious bias in the workplace. Cheyne is a certified life coach and founder of thespirituallitigator.com, where she coaches women lawyers to help them make partner without burning out. Cheyne also presents seminars and writes about the importance of mindfulness and self-care for attorneys. Specifically, Cheyne's article, Mindfulness, A Simpler Way to Alleviate Attorney Stress, was published in the July and August 2017 issue of the American Bar Association GPSOLO magazine, a national publication. And Cheyne's article, The ABCs of Emotional Health, was published in the July 2019 issue of the New Jersey Lawyer magazine. Cheyne's article, Cheyne Says Relax, Take Time for Yourself, was published in the April 2021 issue of New Jersey Super Lawyers magazine. Okay, so a little bit about our guest, Cheyne Scott. I went to law school with Cheyne, and we both took part in one of life's greatest hacks. We studied abroad in Australia and New Zealand together. Down under, we had a very tight-knit group, and we all spent a lot of time together, both inside and outside of class. We took side trips, put a few shrimp on the Barbie, some tinnies in the esky, that sort of thing. Talking about law school stuff, plus sports, music, philosophy, anything to avoid studying. And it's been a decade since I've graduated, and I've been following her journey along the way. She's definitely done some really big things. So I thought it would be great for her to share her journey with some others. So let's welcome Cheyne Scott to the program.
Thank you for having me. So yeah, I love how you started with the life's greatest hack. For anybody that's listening who's considering doing study abroad in law school, I say go ahead and do it. I know that there's a lot of chatter about student loans and all of this, but I'm like, you know what? I couldn't have done it without student loans. I have no regrets. And think about when you can have another time in your life in which you could spend 4 months abroad. Like when are you going to have that time again until you retire? So no, we really had a fantastic group. We were pretty close. We stayed in touch after that. So I've been out to Philly to visit you and your wife, and it's been a really good journey for both of us.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. So let's talk about law school, right? Everyone goes to law school, or there's a lot of different reasons for going to law school. What led you to law school?
So I always knew I wanted to be a lawyer. I was actually voted most likely to be a lawyer in 8th grade. So I was fascinated with lawyer shows, and I really liked the analytical and problem solving side of being a lawyer. So I knew I wanted to be in a courtroom, and I either wanted to be a criminal lawyer or a labor and employment litigator, just because my parents were both kind of in that world. My mom was a teacher for 45 years and my dad was a personnel director for Ann Arbor. So I knew litigation was the direction for me, whether it was in civil or criminal. So that's kind of what led me there.
Okay. And you went to Michigan State, right?
Yeah.
As many people know, I'm sure. So when you went to college, so if you always wanted to be a lawyer, when you went to college, Did you pick a major with that in mind, or did you think, well, I can study anything and still go to law school?
That's really interesting you asked that. So when I first started at Michigan State, I actually was a major in advertising. That was a really bad choice. And it was immediate to me that that was the wrong major. So I switched over to political science pre-law almost immediately after a 5-credit advertisement course. That was not what I expected. So yeah, marketing wasn't my gift in life. I kind of wanted to just dip my feet into something, and I dipped myself right out of there and went to law school, or went towards the law school path. And that was a much better path for me in college.
Yeah. It's funny. The thing I always think, it's a major that always people tend to joke about, which is philosophy, right? Because like they say, what are you going to be, a professional philosopher? But I noticed that a lot of people that majored in philosophy did really well on their LSATs because they were primed for the logic games, for the analogies, for all of that stuff. And I feel like if I could do it all over again, maybe it'd be a good idea to do that, read some really intense stuff. If I knew 100% that I was going to law school.
Yeah, I could see that. And the philosophy class that I did take, I remember, was really interesting. But if we're still talking about scams, I think the LSAT is a whole scam too. So
yeah, no, there's so, I mean, we could have a whole program on that. So, all right. So what led you to the Thomas M. Cooley Law School?
So, and this is not a knock on Cooley, and it's not a knock on anybody that went to Cooley, right? But one of the things that was kind of in the news around the time that we were in school and after we graduated into a not so great market was that Cooley was considered a lower tier school. It wasn't University of Michigan. It wasn't, these other like high tier schools. But I'm so grateful for Cooley and for what it is, because they take in a large amount of students, and you either sink or swim. You really are given this opportunity to either make it work or be a part of the large amount of attrition. So for me, I personally just had too much fun at Michigan State. I look back and my grades weren't horrible, but they weren't what they needed to be to go to University of Michigan or go to Michigan State Law School or, some of the other big schools. But And the LSAT score, I mean, I'll take that to the grave, is like a really terrible score. You're not going to question me on the Supreme Court and get a good answer. But I remember just applying there and being like, this is it. This is where I'm going to go, and I'm going to make it work. And I'm so glad that I did that, because Cooley was a lot of fun. It's like, think about just in general, how you go through high school and college and you have all these prerequisites and requirements and classes that you're never going to use that information again. I will never in my life be in a situation where I can't access a calculator or I'll have to like memorize things. Right. But so like law school was finally the situation where I was learning everything I wanted to learn. And there wasn't a class that I didn't want to take because it was all law related. So it doesn't really matter what container that you're in, whether it's a Cooley, whether it's a, Columbia or whatever it is, you're still going to be learning the theory of law. But I felt like Cooley, because of the large amount of people of different backgrounds, like such a large volume of people, there was less of this competition that I hear about from other law schools. It was just like, we're all here and we're all here to learn. So that's kind of what took me there. And I started at the Lansing campus, but then I transferred to the Grand Rapids campus, which I guess my understanding is it doesn't exist anymore, but we had a really good number of students at that time. That was end of 2008. And I transferred there because I started clerking for a large law firm, and I thought I was going to end up working there back then, and it didn't really work out that way. But, I ended up graduating from the Grand Rapids campus, where I had a really, really good time.
Yeah. A couple of things I'd like to add to what you're saying, which I think are in line. Number one, the line that stuck with me, I had a professor once, pre-trial, I think. He made a really good line. He said, don't knock Cooley. He said, because one of two things, either you choose Cooley or Cooley choose you, right? Because we had some kids that went there for free. They did well on their LSATs, and they offered very generous scholarship opportunities, maybe cheaper to live in Lansing than it is, say, somewhere else. Or like for some people, it was the only opportunity, and then they ended up taking it transferring out to somewhere better or staying there or better ranked, I should say, or staying there and making the most of it. What do you think of this analogy? So did you ever watch the documentary Last Chance U?
No.
On Netflix?
Mm-mm.
No, it's really good. I really recommended it. My wife actually was like obsessed with it. So, and I think they've done variations and spinoffs, and I think they had to move away to different campuses to get more material for future seasons. But there was these junior colleges like in the middle of nowhere, I think like Mississippi or something like that. And they would have these powerhouse community college programs. And it was just a collection of people that, messed up at another school, people that didn't have the grades to go Division I, people that got kicked out of schools. And it was just like they were living on campus. They had dorms. They had like this teacher there that was making sure that they go to class and all this other stuff, but really gritty, really tough. And the people that, did well ended up into Division I schools. There's a large number of NFL alumni. And I just kind of felt like I would categorize in many ways our law school that way. Like it was like you get in what you put out, or you know what I mean? You get out what you put in, right? So people that came there and worked hard and really were focused, did big things. And then some people who just didn't have it, or it wasn't for them, they didn't make it. So what kind of activities did you participate in at Cooley?
Yeah. So I was really into moot court. That's really like one of the biggest things that I wanted to be involved in, because I always wanted to do appellate advocacy. So I was involved in the first year moot court competition, and I look back and I got third best advocate in my first year competitions, one of those little things that you like a trophy in your brain. And then, I took the moot court class, and then I was on the national team, and we went down to San Diego. So that was probably one of my biggest involvements. And then, I was in the trial groups and the litigations section, and just, the study abroad was probably the best decision that I made during law school, without a doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. How did moot court prepare you for practice?
It's so interesting. So I've actually argued in the appellate division in New Jersey 5 times, and I recently argued in the New Jersey Supreme Court. So all of that training, I would say, really prepared me, not just in the actual argument, but just how you prepare yourself, how you prepare the brief, how you have your notes together. And I can't tell you how many times I would see people with like full binders and all their stuff, like carrying it up to the front. You see the judges' faces and they're like, oh God, this is going to be a while. And so when I come up with my little trifold that Professor Brett's taught me how to use back in, Lansing, it's almost like there's this relief. They're like, oh, well, she's not going to talk that much. There's only so much that can fit in those folders. So it's all those little parts of like preparation, the mindset that you need to have, and just what to bring up with you. All those things combined, like really, really prepared me for appellate advocacy over the last 10 years of litigating.
You mentioned a name. I think it's going to come up a few times during the course of this series, Professor Brett. And anything to share about him? I did not have the pleasure of having him, but I know he was a fan favorite. And, he would often get asked to speak at graduation as voted by the students.
Yeah, he was really, I had him for criminal procedure, and he was over the moot court national competition. And he was always just a really great advocate for all of us students. And he would always encourage us. And it was just really fun to know that he had argued in the United States Supreme Court, and he had his old picture from that. And yeah, I haven't seen him in years and years and years, but he was a great influence throughout law school. Definitely.
Yeah. I remember he had 2 claims to fame. He had argued in front of the United States Supreme Court, and he played, I think he played bass at the Green Door, which was on Thursday nights, his students would go out to see his blues band.
Yes, his band was very good.
Okay, so law school. Well, I guess one last question on it. I think you mentioned you liked it. A lot of people hate it. or they're stressed out. I personally think they're either in the wrong place or maybe they're missing the point. But all in all, you say school itself was a fun, positive experience.
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's challenges and of course, there's frustrations when, we all get a grade. We're like, what is this grade? I thought I knew everything. But for the most part, my grades were pretty good in law school. It was, I guess, it felt like the first time where it was like the effort, the grades matched the effort.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt really good about how everything came out. So it was a pretty good experience. It was like when it came to like studying for the bar exam, that's when things started to change and shift as far as like the stress. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one I think big take home that I thought was different between undergrad and law school was in undergrad there was some fluff with your grade. Maybe you turn in a paper, maybe you get extra credit, maybe these sorts of things. With law school, it was like no matter how intense and how focused you were, and you showed up to every class, you were engaged, you read every case, you briefed every case. It all comes down to that whistle blowing for the final and like, what can you do on that day? And that alone is a lot of pressure, but I feel is invaluable experience for what the future holds for you.
Yeah. And I think I said a little bit earlier, like we'll never again have to memorize things again. And I don't think people recognize that at Cooley. I think I only had one open note test. That was
secure transactions.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was the only one. Everything we had to fully memorize everything. And that kind of prepares you for the bar exam because it's the same type of thing. But after that, you're done. You don't ever have to memorize anything again, but it just really sets you up for taking a large amount of information and like understanding it and applying it. So I was really not weird, but I used to get really big paper from Office Depot and just write my entire outline. And I would fill my apartment walls with the entire outline before the exams. And that was my way of teaching my brain, like, it's not too much. It's just everything that's on the wall. If you can memorize everything that's on the wall, you're going to get an A or you're going to pass the exam or, whatever it was. So some people thought it was kind of weird, but then, some people started actually doing it also because they were like, well, maybe there's something to this. So it was difficult, but it definitely did prepare you to, go on and take the bar exam. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, you actually took the next. I was going to bring that up, and when I was going to ask you about the bar exam prep, because I remember you posted videos of, or not video, picture of it. It's like you might have said something like studying the only way I know how, and it was like this massive butcher paper, or whatever you want to call it, with everything written neatly into it. So, do you think you're a visual learner, or what about that method do you find effective?
I think what happens is when you get it out of your head and onto paper, it just makes it less stressful. Because usually and as we practice, we do the same thing where we're like, it's just too much to do. I don't know where to start. But when you put it all in front of you, and the only way you could put all that in front of you is just put it on that big paper and be like, this is it. This is everything that I need to get a law license. Everything on this wall is everything I need. There's nothing outside of these walls that I need. So it was like really mentally preparing. And then as I was going through like my note cards, and I'm like, okay, it's on this wall. So it's like when I sat down to actually take the bar exam, I was able to visualize, oh wait, that's on that wall and that's in purple. And I'm like remembering it, or it's on that wall, it's in blue. And that's where I wrote, this, different things about contracts or about the sales. And as the Michigan bar exam was very Michigan specific. So it required you to not just know the common law, but to know like really small intricacies about no fault insurance that we had never really learned before. And family law stuff that, I'm never going to practice, but we had to know all the factors. So it was really helpful to just visualize it.
Yeah. I feel like, remember we took that intro to law class that was 0 credits, and some people it helped, other people they felt it was additional work. I wish they would talk more about memorization and different methods. Maybe you talk about your methods, that sort of thing. I read this book during COVID called Moonwalking with Einstein. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
I highly recommend it. So it's this guy, he's a journalist, and he seeks to understand these people that are in memorization contests, right? So they can memorize like entire decks of cards or whatever, right? And so he goes to study them, and then he participates in them, and then he eventually, so he actually eventually wins one or whatever. But it's crazy because like there's all these different tricks that you can utilize because of the way our mind works. And some of it, we use in law school, like the mnemonics are huge, right? Ocean, for what I remember, was for adverse possession and things like that. And some of the good Barbary professors, I think, did a good job with that, or they have little songs. I remember that it was a property professor. It Takes Two. She would sing the Stevie Wonder song, It Takes Two. And now I'm kind of contradicting myself. It takes two, baby. It was something that involved two parties, but that was her way to memorize it. So I wish they would have done that. All right, so let's talk bar prep then. So and we'll get into this. You end up taking 2 bars, right?
Yeah.
But let's talk about Michigan bar prep. Where did you go to study for it? What courses did you enroll in? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So for Michigan bar exam, I took Barbary, and I also at the time, and I'm not sure if they still do this because we're 10, 11 years removed, but there was a specific bar prep course that they offered, which went over Michigan law, which was insanely invaluable. So if it is offered still, that's one thing to do. And there's a book that they had that went over old bar exam essay questions. That was absolutely fantastic. So those 2 things, I think Barbary was incredible. And the funny thing about Barbary is, it's not to say that law school is not important, but things don't really click until you're kind of going through bar prep. And so you're watching the videos and you're like, oh, that's what an offer is. It's like really simple things and Barbary just breaks them down so much more, like very objectively. Whereas we've gone through theory, we've gone through all these cases, and it's just like, they're not going to ask you about cases on the bar exam. They're going to ask you a question in this way. So I took the Michigan bar exam in February of 2011. And I look back between the 2 bars, because I ended up taking New Jersey, which I'll tell you about. But I just like Michigan was such a hard exam because it's a bunch of different topics that it could be testing, but you're still going to have 15 questions, and it's timed. And at the time that you couldn't type, so you're like writing, and I'm worried about my awful handwriting. Like, oh, I'm going to lose points because of this. And then I finished early both sessions. And I was like, oh, I'm totally failing because I'm finishing early. I must be missing something. And then the last day of the Michigan bar exam, I get a voicemail from the law clerk at the judge in Jersey, where I ended up going to work. I got a voicemail saying, please send your transcripts. And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm going to fail Michigan. And now I got to take Michigan and New Jersey together.
Wow.
So it was a very stressful time. But it worked out. I mean, I passed Michigan. And then I went on to take Jersey, which wasn't as difficult, but, taking another bar exam is still terrible, and going to another state where I didn't really know a lot of people and kind of going out there. But for the New Jersey bar, I didn't take Barbary again because I knew it was 100% common law. So I ended up taking Adaptabar, which was a little bit cheaper. And again, I don't know if these are great courses anymore because that was 11 years ago, which is crazy. Like how time flies.
Right. Yeah. So like the New Jersey bar, I didn't take it. My wife did both. And what she told me was that it was like some of our tort exams at Cooley, right? Like it was this huge outline dump, and you had to be prepared to just rapidly write, get as much onto that page as possible. And often I've heard people wouldn't pass because they weren't kind of used to writing like that, like, just getting it all in there. And, so I don't, again, it's been a decade, maybe things have changed, but was it like that for you?
Yeah, and it was. And that kind of goes back to why Cooley prepared us, because we were outline dumping and memorizing things for the whole 3 years we were there. So we kind of knew how to do that, how to drop as many things as possible. And we knew what happened when you did it, when you went back and you're like, well, what did I miss? And when you would do practice exams, which, it's another thing. I'm pretty sure all law schools do this, but, Cooley would allow you to have like past exam answers and to kind of practice. And so you would see, okay, this is what they're looking for. So you kind of knew what the bar examiners were looking for that same reason.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did someone pass out literally during your exam? The New Jersey, was that you?
It was not me passing out.
No. Was that someone
yes,
in
that
your
did
room?
happen. And it happened far away from me because we were in a huge room at the Meadowlands. So I just remember hearing commotion, but you're so terrified during the bars. You're like in a fog. So it's like you have earplugs in and you see commotion, but you're not really you're like, well, I can't look around because they're going to think I'm cheating. So whatever happened over there, I'm sure they'll be fine. Like there was never plus ambulance.
There was no duty to rescue, right? And if you did rescue,
no duty to rescue, no.
Then you would be held to those standards, right?
Correct.
If I remember correctly, I think I might be getting my stories mixed up because I remember hearing a story of someone going into labor and then finished.
That was in Illinois.
Yeah. And then, maybe it was that one because I think that girl passed. She passed the bar exam. Wow. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Crazy times. So, yeah, think about this. I kind of want to touch on, and I think it's good advice that like when people sit for different bars, because you talked about Michigan and being Michigan specific, it's really important to talk to people about some of the nuances, like how is it focused? A lawyer in Louisiana once told me this story about there was a bar exam question and there was like a very Louisiana specific word. I think it was toboggan or something like that, which means canoe. And only people in Louisiana would know that, right? Kind of like if there was a question on the Michigan bar about a party store, right? All 49 other states would think there's confetti being sold there and things like that. But people appealed it. And I guess in Louisiana, it held up that, you're considered to be a resident, that it was within the purview of something you should be held accountable. But it sort of reshaped the way you might have understood the question and therefore answered the question. So, very good what you said, you understood the common law aspect of it, but you should look at it holistically and see what to attack, what are things you should look into, that sort of thing. So you graduate, you take the Michigan bar, and then did you know of your Michigan results by the time you took the New Jersey bar, or did that timeline look like?
So I took the February bar, February 2011 for Michigan. And then I'd gotten the offer to clerk for the judge in New Jersey. I got the Michigan bar results April 20th of 2011. And then I took the New Jersey bar in July. And then I got the results while I was still clerking. So I was like already moved to Jersey and clerking for the judge. And we got the results late because of whatever issue was going on with their bar people. We didn't get those results until the end of November. So that was excruciating. So my whole thing was like, look, and they told us like, don't worry, when you're a clerk, you can retake it in February. Nobody's firing you. But I was like, please, I just do not want to take another bar. So I was very happy when that was all done, because I was like, I'm not taking any more. I'm done. That's it.
Yeah. So results day, right? I had a friend, I don't know if it was a similar situation, but I had a friend who was clerking in New Jersey, Southern New Jersey. And a bunch of them had also sat for PA. Pennsylvania's came out first. And we knew it was going to come out on a Friday. They didn't tell us when. There was like a pop-up, you're frantically checking the website and like some pop-up comes up and it's like, oh, it's something different. It's like, yeah, they're going to be announced tomorrow. So he said like that Friday was super intense, and like, I guess they would all eat lunch together in this cafeteria, and everyone was like silent and like staring at each other. He said it was like they were in basic training, just on pins and needles. Do you have a similar story or?
Well, so for Michigan, I had a friend that worked in the court system and texted me and said the results are being mailed out. They should come tomorrow. So with Michigan, it wasn't posted online. It was actually mailed to you.
Okay.
And so the day that I knew it was coming, I left the house. I went out with a friend and I said, Dad, just call me because I can't sit in the house. I was losing my mind. And so my dad called me while I was with my friend and we went to the bar. So it was like, we either go to the bar and cry or we go to the bar and celebrate. With Jersey, it was online. And so it's one of those, you're refreshing the page constantly. Mm-hmm. And it had just gotten to the point where it was just taking so long. Like everybody had the results but Jersey. But what they had done is the local bar association had put together a get together, kind of anticipating, oh, they'll come out within the next couple of weeks. So when they finally came out, then we had like kind of just a get together at a bar in Hoboken. And it was kind of like the whole, like kind of like looking at each other, like, is this, congratulations, is this not? And so it was nice. And for the people that didn't, and this was one thing that was really great. For the people that didn't pass, one of the judges in Hudson County, she actually called them all into her chambers and said, look, I failed the bar the first time. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. Just, take the time that you need. If you actually need to take extra days off, let me know. I'll make sure that you're accommodated. And all of them retook it and all of them passed the second time. But wow. I think that was, those little things are so important. And I think that's one of the reasons I never left this area, because I always found that like New Jersey and especially Hudson County was always looking out for its lawyers.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. And you're right. There is that awkwardness, right? You almost feel bad. And you hope that those people eventually pass. And that's awesome that they did. But yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised, like the phenomenal lawyers out there that have all, not passed. I'm from California. I didn't obviously take the California bar, but I mean, there's like a illustrious list of people that did not pass the first time. Yeah, I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's got to be deflating because you know how much effort goes into it. They're not working any less harder, and but it's another life lesson. In practice, it's the same, right? You put all this effort into a case, and you may not ultimately prevail. So,
yeah.
All right, let's talk about what you do now.
Yeah. So I am a partner at Cheyne Lamparello. That's a law firm in Secaucus, and I've been practicing there for 10 years. We have about 50 attorneys, and I practice labor and employment litigation. So anything from preparing employee handbooks, anti-harassment training, harassment and discrimination investigations, disciplinary hearings, up to defending employers in harassment and discrimination lawsuits. So they keep me pretty busy here.
That's good. I got a question for you, random question for you, because this is my theory. Like yearly reviews, do you believe that like the employer should take them really seriously? Like when they're giving them to employees?
So I can give you the lawyer answer of it depends. Okay. So what happens with these annual reviews is they can either be a gift or a curse. You've got to do them every year. If you have decided to let them like go in flux for the last 3 years, and now you've decided that you want to fire someone, and all of a sudden you're doing a evaluation for the first time in 3 years, get ready for that lawsuit, because that is some type of retaliation. We'll find something that you did wrong. And that's why you decided to target me and give me a negative review. So if you're doing reviews, you got to do them. And if you're not doing them and you've decided, oh, we want to discipline this person, you've got to be really careful and methodical about it, because I can't tell you how many times my cases are predicated on this is a retaliatory evaluation, and they've never evaluated anybody before. Right. So just be careful with it.
So where I'm going with this, hear me out on this, right? Okay. There is this umpire in baseball, and he's the worst umpire in baseball. Just go on the internet, you'll see. The whole internet hates him long after I've disliked him, right? And he's the worst umpire in baseball because I know his name, right? If I know your name, if you're behind a mask and I know your name, there's something wrong with you, right? So he had the nerve to like sue Major League Baseball, like maybe 5 years back, saying I'm not getting, the marquee assignments, and it's because you're discriminating against me, right? And I had to laugh. I'm like, but everyone knows you're the worst. Like I could put together a highlight reel of the things he's done. Not only has he blown calls, he's arrogant about it when he blows the calls. But then I heard that like in his pleadings, he said that, he got good glowing reviews, right? And I was like, this is a lesson, right? If an employee is not good, I understand it creates awkwardness, but you need to find a way to document in there that, there are performance issues. This isn't a model employee, because, then the worst ump in baseball is going to sue you for saying that you discriminated against him when the whole world knows that he's the worst ump in baseball. So.
Yeah, I think you've described a lot of my cases too, because by the time things get to me, the supervisors are telling me, well, this person's been really like not that great at their job for the past 20 years. Well, have you ever disciplined them? No. Well, let me see their evaluations. They don't have any. Or if they have them, they have like one or two that are all glowing. Well, who wrote this? Well, we didn't want to make this person feel bad. Well, now you have a $500,000 lawsuit. So here we go. I feel bad for you. Here we are. Yeah, it's hard to tell people that they're not performing up to a certain standard, but I think that comes down to, actual supervisors being taught how to be supervisors. I think what happens is we promote people and then we never like give them any leadership training. So they have no idea how to write evaluations, no idea how to like evaluate people. Because you could just write below, like not satisfactory, but have no idea how to follow that up. Like you have to give actual examples. On this date, they failed to do this on this date. But sometimes they're afraid because they're like, oh, this person's going to hit me with a discrimination lawsuit. But it's like, if you're specific about what your feedback is, then that's less likely to happen. And just remember, anybody with $200 can file a lawsuit. So that's always something that can happen. But it's less likely to happen if you document things. Right. And it's hard work, right? Because we're all thinking, oh, I'm going to get to that. And then we never get to it. And then 5-10 years have gone by and you haven't gotten to anything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
How has the whole, work from home, how has that sort of changed the dynamic in the employee-employer relations?
The interesting thing is electronic communications can be a very can be a cesspool of harassment and discrimination. So the way we email each other, the way that we get on social media with each other has really changed. People have gotten a little bit more comfortable in the way that they communicate, and not just maybe online, but maybe not just written, but also with Zoom and all these things. So what I see sometimes is people were shut in for a long period of time and didn't necessarily have the frustration tolerance that they once had. And so they were having more, like they're blowing up more and they're losing their temper more than if they were seeing each other every day and learning how to deal with frustration and disappointment and irritation and all the things that come with just being in a workplace with other humans. And so I've seen, unfortunately, like social media just breakdowns of communication to where people are fighting about work stuff on Facebook or fighting about work stuff on Twitter. And it's like, how did we get here? This wouldn't have happened if we were in person every day, but now everything is so heightened and everybody feels so offended or more offended than normal. So that's one of the things that I've seen from my end is just a lot of breakdown in communication that probably wouldn't happen if we were seeing each other face to face more often.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a very good point. Do you get the feeling that performance has improved or gotten worse due to this dynamic?
It's really tough to say that because there's so many different industries. So for some industries, working at home has made things a lot more streamlined and a lot more productive. For other industries, people have unfortunately taken advantage of the additional free time that working from home gives them. So it's like you may, if somebody has like someone that they need to complete a task, and they call them and they're like, oh, I'm getting my nails done.
Right.
I was, this is part of my lunch break. But it's like, it's different from if they're in their office and they're going to grab a bite and they're going to come back to their desk, whereas like they're just completely unavailable. And unfortunately, I think a lot of workers have been their own worst enemies when it comes to the work from home. Because a lot of times when they're like touting it, they're saying all the things that their supervisors really don't care. They're like, hey, I get to go to the bank and walk my dog and spend more time with my kids, and I get to do all these things. And supervisors do not want to hear that. They don't want to hear that you got to spend more time with these things that you enjoy doing. They're not hearing I'm more productive and I'm making my boss more money. So it's like when they're touting the great things about work from home, they've got to remember that their audience is ultimately the supervisors that's making these like decisions about whether or not they want them to come back.
Yep, I totally agree.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something big that you did recently. I mean, you've done a lot of big things, but let's talk about that Supreme Court case that you argued.
Yeah. So it wasn't the sexiest of issues. It was about a payroll tax in one of our clients. So we represent the city of Newark, and there was a payroll tax, and there was a question of whether or not it violated the Dormant Commerce Clause. So all these things that I thought I would never have to look at ever again after law school, I learned more about that Commerce Clause than I ever thought I would. I mean, it was interesting to me, right? And writing Supreme Court briefs is at like a higher level than any way I'd ever written before, later nights than I'd ever worked before. And just to get up there and argue it and actually know what I was talking about before I forgot all of it, was so cool. And it was my first argument in person since COVID. So all my arguments have been on Zoom. And so it was in person in Trenton in front of the justices. And it was a really, really cool experience. And I want to do it again. Hopefully I'll have another controversial issue that's not the Commerce Clause that I can argue at some point.
So one thing that I enjoyed that a lot of people in your position wouldn't have done, I think you chronicled your inner feelings throughout the course of that argument. And didn't you mention you even blacked out at one point? Like, meaning like I guess you were on autopilot and going through the argument, but don't recall it, that sort of thing?
Yeah. And I think that goes back to the whole, what they taught us in law school, what Professor Brett's taught me. It was like, remember your roadmap, the first few sentences you're going to say, that's all you have to memorize, and everything else after that, you kind of can look down. But it was just like, I remember getting up there and, okay, let me just get my roadmap out. And then after that, I didn't really remember much. And then it was like, always pay attention to because it's like, you're looking at all the people. So you're looking from like left to right and looking at everybody's facial expressions. Do they look bored? Are they done with me? Are they annoyed? Read the room. And so, when the Chief Justice said, anything else, that's my signal to sit down. So it was like, I sat down and I'm like, I don't remember anything that I said. I remember nothing. And then I get, you get back to your car and you have all these text messages. You did a great job, because it was streaming on the website. And I was like, oh, I guess but people at my job approved of it. And a couple of my friends from some high school friends watched it and they thought it was a good job. So I'm like, okay, I guess. And I went back and I watched it and I was like, whoa, I said that? That's great.
How long was that oral argument?
So altogether with everybody arguing, it was over 2 hours. I only talked maybe 15 minutes because it was mainly the state of New Jersey and then Jersey City, and then Newark kind of had a smaller part in the case. But, so I think the state talked for maybe an hour, and I think Jersey City talked for maybe 45 minutes. And then I kind of came in and they kind of made it clear before I got up. They're like, okay, don't repeat everybody else's, arguments. And so it's just like, yeah, we're not wasting anybody's time. We're just up here to say the words that I have to get out. And then because I had the short version and the long version. And I was like, okay, we're doing the short version. And then, they asked one question. I was very happy with my one question. And that was it. And it was a really, really great experience.
That's awesome. Speaking of awesome, let's talk about something else. So you made partner within the last couple of years, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about this. And, I could be wrong, but my thoughts are that people that aren't lawyers, people that are on the outside, they would say that this is the ultimate goal, right? Like the ultimate goal is to become a judge or to make partner, right? I don't know if that was your ultimate goal and like you reached the mountaintop and now there's more to conquer, but just talk about that journey a little bit.
Yeah. So every firm is different. And I think everybody, regardless of where you are, whether it's in a firm of, 1,000 people, a firm of 2 people, a firm, with here, we're like in 50. So it's kind of like in the middle, is to get clear as to what the partnership track is and what that means and how long the people who are partner waited before they made partners. So it's like whenever they have partnership announcements, okay, how many years have they been here? What's the type of work that they do? What are your requirements? We know our billable requirements, but a lot of people don't know what their revenue requirements are, because you could bill till the cows come home, but if you're not bringing in the revenue, if your clients aren't paying the bills, then those billable hours don't mean much. And so just understanding what your requirements are year over year and actually asking for feedback. Lawyers are notoriously terrible at giving feedback. Your feedback is usually getting more work. But being more specific about what do I need to do? And sometimes some of the people don't know. They're just like, I just made partner one day. And so, okay, well, I've been here, whatever amount of years. And I guess this is the next step. So for me, I was there for 8 years before making partner. And I would say the first few years, you're just kind of coasting and just, in shock the whole time. You're like, oh, they still haven't fired me, so I must be doing something right. But then you get more intentional as the years go by and you start having more autonomy with the clients and you're starting to like build your own book, because there is no instruction manual as to how to build a book of business. It's one of those things that you just kind of have to figure out, which is something that you can get really resentful about. And you got to be really careful and make sure you're keeping your mindset like level, because the way that the person down the hall is building a book is going to be different from the way that you're building a book, depending on what the practice area is. And really, it comes down to meeting people, telling them that you're a lawyer and just making offers to help them. That's what it always comes down to, but being very clear about the type of law that you're doing and want to do. So yeah, it's kind of how I got here.
When you reached that accomplishment, was it everything you thought it would be, or how would you explain?
Yeah, it was, first of all, it kind of affirms the work that you've done up to that point, because being a lawyer is a lot of work and a lot of hours and a lot of time. So when you're recognized by your firm and it's like, okay, you're a leader, that's a great thing. I would say that when you become a leader, though, like there's not going to be like a leadership training that'll teach you this is how you become a partner. It's kind of like you've got to figure it out. And that can be kind of disillusioned. Like, oh, what am I supposed to do? Oh, I'm in charge of people. People come to me and ask me for advice. I'm supposed to like review things. It really requires you to add that skill set and figure it out as you go. And I see a lot of partners that kind of flounder. And I did, I don't have enough help. And, I gave this person an assignment and it takes too long to explain things to people. And I just rather do it myself. And there is a skill that comes with having the patience to explain things to associates, putting the time aside to actually review their work and to sit down with them and give them feedback and to watch them get better over time. Because if they were as good as you, they'd also be a partner. So they're not going to be at the same level. And it's our responsibility as partners to bring them along, but we have to make time for it, even when we tell ourselves we don't have time, because at some point someone had time for us. So we have to kind of bring that up. So there's a lot of things that I just didn't know that went into it. It's not, a lot of people have this idea like, oh, you're just going to be a partner and then everybody's going to do your work. And then you just go to play golf all day. No, it's not like that at all. It's a lot more work, because now you're supervising and you're responsible for someone else. And the people that are not starting as rock stars. They're starting as first year associates. They don't know what you know. So it takes a lot of patience, time management, and the desire to make, help people be as good as you are.
Yeah. I'm reminded of that meme. Maybe they should make a partner version of it, right? Where like what people think, what my friends think I do, what my family thinks I do, what I actually do, that sort of thing. And you'd have someone on a golf course schmoozing. You'd have, another one with like all kinds of money, that you're sitting in, and then it's what you described, which is a lot more work than those first two pictures on the meme.
Yeah. Yeah. It requires a lot of patience. And I think a lot of people don't have it. And I've heard, people say, oh, I just wish they would understand. And it's like, well, how do you think that you understood? Somebody sat down with you, but some people didn't have that. And there's some resentment. And they think, well, it didn't happen for me, so I shouldn't do it for someone else. And that's a really dangerous path to go down, because then you're just not going to have help. But it's really because of you, not because of the other person.
Right. Okay, so for this portion of the program, I'd like the time is yours. Feel free to promote anything that you want, your firm, your initiative you're working on, companies you have, a cause, etc.
Yeah. So I am also a certified life coach, and I created that when I burned out. 4 years into practice, I burned out. I ended up in the ER with severe vertigo, and the only thing that they could find that actually caused it was severe stress. And after that, I started Googling and trying to figure out, okay, how do I deal with my stress? And at first, all the results were like, leave, get out of law, save yourself. And I didn't want that. And so at the time, I found mindfulness, which was a really great help, but there was something missing. And so finally, I kind of found mindset work, thought work, and life coaching. And that's what really changed everything for me, helped me to manage my mind. And if you think about it, 4 years in order to make partner, you're going to have to do more work. So how do I do more work but not be stressed out? And that's really what the coaching helped with me. So I became certified in the middle of the pandemic. So 2021, I became certified, and I specifically help women make partner without burning out. So it's kind of an idea. I burned out so you don't have to. And so I work with clients one-on-one. My website is thespirituallitigator.com. And as of now, I usually do a mindful video every Monday on my Instagram, and it's also on my LinkedIn. And I'm on Instagram, Spiritual Litigator, Facebook, Spiritual Litigator, and you can just search my name on LinkedIn. And so that's kind of something I'm very, very passionate about, because I think every single person experiences stress as a lawyer. But when you add different layers, like being a woman or being a woman of color, like just experience stress in a very different way for various different reasons. And so that's not to say that one person's stress is more quote unquote valuable than another's. It's just to say these different experiences are based on intersectionality. And I try to break that down and work with people from where they are. So that's my pitch. So check me out.
Yeah, no, I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a huge fan of you doing this. And one of the reasons why I wanted you as my first guest is, you weren't born on third base and thought you hit a triple, right? Statistically, there's numbers against you. And then you add to that, you didn't go to Harvard Law. Your parents weren't in this field, or you didn't have a firm that you could go to. You had to leave your home state behind and come somewhere brand new. And you did it all yourself with the help of others. But you know what I mean? No handouts that other people might have had. And you've done it. You've thrived. You've reached a goal that many people have in mind. You're honest about all the obstacles that are in the way. And, if I don't want Joe Buck coaching me on how to get into the broadcast booth, right? I want the person that did it, through grit and got there without their daddy's name. So, yeah. My wife heard you on a CLE the other day. She was fortunate enough to attend, and she was loving it. She was like, yeah, she speaks the truth. So yeah, no. And to add to your services, or to add, piggyback of what you're saying, like people often maybe confide in their spouse, when they're stressed out about things, and that person can only, they may only have one line of advice or one way to attack it. And that advice can only go so far. It's good to go to somebody else who can provide a different perspective, that can provide a different angle, that maybe can be tougher with the person to get them where they need to be. So yeah, for those of you looking for it, I highly endorse Cheyne's life coaching program.
Thank you.
All right. So for the next piece, we're going to do something here. Have you ever seen the movie Philadelphia with Denzel Washington? So my favorite line, arguably in cinema, is explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old, right? So are there any like legal concepts or myths that you wish to dispel that the audience can learn something today? And I'll give this disclaimer. It does not constitute legal advice. This is for educational and entertainment purposes only. Feel free to add any sort of disclaimer on top of this.
The one thing that I thought of was your lawyer friends and family members are not your free letter writers. You know, people think every problem can be solved with a strongly worded letter. And especially in employment, I'll have people call me, I just need a letter, to send this letter. And it's like, if your employers were so predictable that you could just send them a letter and fix things, then you wouldn't need that letter in the first place, right? They're unpredictable, and writing a letter is only the beginning, and it's not free. So to dispel myths, we as lawyers don't just sit around writing strongly worded letters and just like making it rain. We actually have to review a lot of things and contracts and handbooks, and we send letters and get told to kick rocks. And then we have to make decisions about, do we file a lawsuit? And then we have to do depositions and investigations. And it's a lot of work. So just remember, your lawyer friends and family members are not free letter writers. Pay us.
Yeah, it sounds like they treat you like you're the buff friend, and they treat you as their muscle at time, right?
Well, and Mark, this is why I don't do work for friends or family, and I've had many a friend and family call, and I'm like, and I will give you a referral. It's a boundary that I set at the very beginning of the whole process it's a boundary I set at the beginning of the process that I usually keep. And I find that it just makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. You want to keep your relationships and your professional life separate. All right. Well, Cheyne, it's been great. I appreciate you taking time on this Monday morning to talk shop with me. Thank you for joining.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking with you.
All right. To all my listeners, stay solid. And Piano Man, take us out.
Need a lawyer? Are you having financial, criminal, or family challenges? Call or text the Mark Kachi Law Firm, 215-439-7899.